Ooh, what is the psychology behind an empath with dark humor? This is good. So, an empath and dark humor, they don't really have anything to do with one another. And can they coexist? Of course they can. An empath is just somebody who's highly attuned and sensitive to the emotions and feelings of other people. So they can empathize with people, their situations, their circumstances, and those emotions that go along with those circumstances, whether it's joy, frustration, anger, pain, sadness. That's an empath. They're just highly attuned people to other people's emotions. Now, what about dark humor? What is that? Now, a lot of people don't agree with dark humor. I personally struggle with certain kinds of dark humor, but I understand it and I understand why. So, what is humor often used for? Coping. Take the class clown, for example, constantly joking around. Everything's funny all the time because they struggle with coping with painful emotions. They struggle with vulnerability. They struggle showing people their emotions. They feel like it's a weakness, so they have to constantly crack jokes. Now, dark humor is just a form of humor. It's considered morbid, grotesque, and around death. So why would people joke about that? It's disturbing, right? It's often used in professions such as police, firefighting, paramedics, and military because they witness extreme, grotesque trauma. So often, dark humor comes from trauma and pain. It's where you're struggling with coping with really painful emotions, and using dark humor can lighten the mood and the uncomfortable feeling and the fact that they just struggle with vulnerability and they can't cope with these emotions, so they try to throw humor into the mix. Now you look at somebody who's a first responder. So my dad was a firefighter for years, and in these professions they didn't have counseling, so they had to find ways to cope, and black humor was one, or dark humor was one way to do it, and it was to try to lighten, again, crazy trauma. So sounds morbid and sick to most people, but it's just a coping strategy. It's a way to connect as well and deal with these painful emotions. So for an example, they show up to a call where somebody's taken their own life by asphyxiation and hanging, and they look, and one says, wow, he's really choked up. That's an example of dark humor. It's very triggering for people, and it's very hard for people to digest. But yes, you can be very empathetic and have dark humor. Coping strategy.